Welcome to the Kapital News. I'm your host, Alex Kreitis. Today is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. Thank you so much for joining me. The title of today's podcast, Farewell, President Trump. Today, the President of the United States gave his farewell address to the country. It was about 20 minutes long, I do believe, and took place in the East Room of the White House. Maybe if we have time to get to some other topics, we'll go through some market performance, maybe take a look at the U.S. debt clock. Dingbat Janet Yellen had her confirmation hearing today up on Capitol Hill. I did not have the time today to listen to that confirmation hearing, so I don't fully know the stupid words that came out of her stupid face today. But I'm in a good mood, and if I had listened to her, I'd probably be in a bad one. But I did find an article out of the Washington Post. If we have time, we'll get to that, and we'll highlight some of the things that she has been saying to the senators today. Obviously, it's par for the course for the most part, because I did read the article before jumping on the podcast here. Par for the course. We don't have to worry about the debt today. We got to put ourselves on a sustainable fiscal path, yada, yada, yada. Ridiculous, but if we have time, we'll get to that. But because it was the president's farewell address, I just want to break it down. I don't have the speech in front of me. I did listen to it. It was the right tone. And quite honestly, had the president maintained that type of tone and composure over these past 4 years, very likely he would have been the one being sworn in tomorrow and not Joe Biden. Now, you can look past, obviously, you're going to have to look past the impeachment stuff and this, that, and the other. But nonetheless, the man could have become the first president to have been impeached, but also to have won re-election while being an impeached president. It very easily could have happened. Now, I am no fan of Donald Trump, as this audience has learned to know. I voted for Donald Trump in 2016. There was no way I was voting for Hillary Clinton in the status quo. The woman has done absolutely nothing positive for this country. There's no major legislation that shares her name, whether you would agree with it or not. It just doesn't exist. She did not have a good record as a senator. She did not have a good record as a Secretary of State. And her family, unfortunately, are always caught up in some type of controversy. And to me, we just don't need any more of that. So here's another guy. This is the choice you get in the United States. You get Coke or Pepsi, and I went with Coke. I said, okay, let's give this guy a chance because there's no way Hillary Clinton is going to make it better. The status quo has got to go. So I looked at Donald Trump as somebody who was playing a role, playing a character, knows how to manipulate the media, and that's all it was. He wanted free media. He wanted the airtime. He wanted all of the eyes and ears on him. So he was just playing it up to the cameras. And I figured there's no way that's actually who he is. And even if it is, if he should win the presidency, once he is sitting behind that resolute desk in the Oval Office, surely the weight, the gravity of all of that is going to weigh down on him. And he's going to say, I got to take this seriously. Well, unfortunately, that really did not happen. But nonetheless, he did what any other type of Republican president has done or attempts to do, right? What do they want to do? They want to cut taxes. They want to cut regulations. They want to undo something that Democrats did before them, maybe renegotiate trade deals or talk about getting involved in other trade deals, getting into other international agreements or out of international agreements, do some saber rattling here or there, talk up the military-industrial complex, create hundreds of billions, if not trillion-dollar deficits, because that's what Republicans do, because they only handle one side of the equation. So he got the tax cuts, but they didn't cut spending. That's half the equation, and if you get a 50% on a test, that's a failure. And that's why we had $100 billion deficits and $1 trillion deficit before COVID-19. That's how that works. It's not rocket science. And I'm all for tax cuts. I want the federal income tax completely abolished. I want the Federal Reserve completely abolished. But you have to cut spending with it. They didn't, and those are the problems that we now have to deal with. And now they're going to continue to be glossed over, and Dingbat's going to say, well, we don't have to worry about them. We have to continue to add more debt to the problem to solve a problem caused by debt. That's what they said during the great financial crisis and the lead up to it, and that's what they've been continuing to do ever since then. We have a problem created by too much debt. We're going to solve the problem by adding on even more debt. This is not the Twilight Zone. You are not dreaming. You are not on an acid trip. You are listening to reality. This is what your elected and unelected officials and quote-unquote leaders tell you to your face, and people continue to vote for them. But nonetheless, Donald Trump did not do anything that another Republican would have done or attempted to do. That's it. He didn't drain the swamp. He didn't make that better, not even close. But hey, Bush didn't drain the swamp. People reelected him. Obama comes in. Well, he could have had a clean slate, and he did. I didn't vote for Obama. But, he was the president of the United States. See what he can do. He had a clean slate. Could have made those banks pay the price. He didn't. He continued to bail them out. Bailed out the auto sector. There could have been massive restructuring, liquidations, and a lot of these banks would have been out of business. And we, as a country, as a society, as an economy, would be much better off because other smarter entrepreneurs and managers would have sprung up to fill the gap, to fill the need. And they would have been doing it the right way. Instead, no. We print trillions of dollars out of thin air, give it to the banks that caused a lot of these problems to begin with, and round we go. And we're doing it again at an even bigger degree, which is, of course, more dangerous. And there's no end in sight. In fact, this is just the beginning of a new ballgame. That's all it is. But Donald Trump, had he maintained composure, had he been able to keep his mouth shut and had a little bit more credibility, he'd be the one most likely being sworn in tomorrow morning. But that's not the case, is it? Had he shown a little bit more empathy with respect to COVID-19, he very well could have won re-election. And of course, a significant portion of the country believes that he did win re-election and that it was a rigged election. Gee, I wonder where they got that idea from. The president. If I win, perfectly okay. If I lose, it was rigged. Now, I've threw this out there before during the election. Perhaps Donald Trump does not want to win. Perhaps Donald Trump does not want to win re-election. Now, of course, Donald Trump loves winning, but if he is going to lose because he just doesn't like being the president, he can't really live the playboy life that he used to, being in a penthouse, getting on a plane, go here, go there, all over the place, and not having everybody watching you. But if he was going to lose, it was going to be on his terms. It was going to be because it was rigged. Not because I lost, but because it was rigged. And then I'm going to go through all these investigations. I don't care if the country burns down with the divisiveness and everything else. It's going to be on my terms. Now, I'm not saying that that's what was actually through the president's mind, but it could have been. It most definitely could have been. And it's understandable. That job, who would really want that job at the end of the day, especially in this type of climate, in this type of environment? So obviously, given the fact of his personality and how he tweeted and how he would create a little fire here, and instead of putting it out, he'd start another fire somewhere else. So as to distract people, let's just keep creating all these fires. And then you create this Trump derangement syndrome. You create this out-of-control left-wing media that is just obsessed with the man. And that just drives further division within the country. Both sides are to blame. Democrats are to blame, the left-wing media is to blame, the right-wing media is to blame, the president's to blame. The people of the United States are to blame. Enough blame to go around for everybody. Because everybody just wants to hear what they want to hear. If this is the policy you agree with, well, then that's it. There's no room for debate. There's no civil discussion. That's it. I think the president had made a mistake when he first came in and was going right after Obamacare. He didn't have a plan. The Republicans didn't have a plan. They were complaining about it for 6, 8 years, whatever. They didn't have a plan to replace it. Not that it needs replaced. It needs to be repealed, and that's it. The free market is what needs to replace it. Not some government policy. We got enough of those causing enough problems as it is. But they didn't even have that. So now, that unfortunately, with the healthcare system, it's half-assed, which is almost even worse than Obamacare was. So that hasn't been resolved. But what the president, in my opinion, should have tackled first was infrastructure. Because had he went after infrastructure, he could have came in, he said, look, I have some political capital, which, of course, any incoming president is going to have. The question, of course, is how much do they have? But let's put the country first. Let's rebuild this country. I'm a builder. I'm somebody who changed the skyline of Manhattan. I'm somebody who has changed the skyline of other major cities across this country, across the world, blah, 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 blah. However he wants to sell it, spin it, market it, whatever. He's going to do that anyway. And it's needed. And I know the rhetoric was heated throughout the entirety of the campaign. Republicans against Republicans, crazy Bernie against Hillary, and then Trump versus Hillary. We need to calm down. We need to build this country back together. There would have been, I believe, bipartisan support with that. Could have gotten things done. And that would have been a legitimate investment within this country, for this country. Because it is needed. This isn't like this is just pet projects now from greedy senators who are just trying, to continue with the corruption and nepotism to give these contracts to their cousins, their nephews, or whatever. It's actually needed. The infrastructure of this country, in many parts, is crumbling. And if we want to get with the 21st century, which we most definitely need to do, we need to make those types of prudent investments. But there's 4 years gone, didn't happen. Instead, the Trump administration with the Republican Party went straight at the heart of the Democrats and went after Obamacare. Well, there's no doubt you were going to have a huge fight. And then, of course, you have that memorable vote, that down vote from Senator John McCain. Oh, and I wonder why John McCain voted no. Well, geez, maybe somebody ticked him off. Yeah. Then you went after tax cuts, which, again, perfectly fine. But that's going to cause a problem with the Democrats. Now, you don't let that deter you, but try to build up some more political capital. Try to get more of the country on board with the program. Rebuild the country. Make America great again. That's how we could have gotten there. Start with that deal. Start in a bipartisan manner. Then you start to build relationships with some of these Democratic senators and congressmen and women. And then you can start to make some deals when it comes to Obamacare. Then you can start to make some more deals when it comes to tax cuts and regulation cuts, etc., etc. I think that was a big mistake right out of the gate. And I really don't know, in defense of Donald Trump, if he was really thinking about that or if he was just sort of caught up in the whirlwind of everything going on and trusting some of his early advisors and some of those Republicans within the House and the Senate and saying, okay, we've been talking about Obamacare for all these years. Now we got to finally do something about it because we have the White House, we have the House of Representatives, and we have the Senate. So this is what we're going to do. But that is history, as they say. It's almost as if it's been a Greek tragedy over the past 4 years because there was a lot of promise with the potential of a clean slate. Again, same thing with Barack Obama. He blew it, and Trump, unfortunately, blew it as well. The country was and has been ready for some type of change, most definitely fed up with the status quo, which is the swamp. You can call it whatever you want, status quo, swamp, other names, but that's what it is, and people are sick and tired of it because their wages aren't going up. They're not keeping up with the cost of living adjustments. Of course, we are insulted on a daily basis that there is no inflation, that inflation is good, and that inflation can actually run hotter than where it is today. That is theft. Just anytime somebody says the word inflation, just substitute the word theft. It's basically a tax. It is a tax. It's a hidden tax because you don't vote for this one, but your politicians do because they don't want to come back to their districts and look you in the face and say to you, yeah, you want this policy, you want this program, and this one, and this one, and this one? Well, money don't grow on trees. It's going to have to be paid somehow, and we're going to have to raise your taxes. Oh, no, well, I'm never going to vote for you if you're going to raise my taxes. Oh, no. Oh, okay, but you still want it, right? Yeah, okay, well, vote for me. I'll do it, and I won't raise your taxes. Instead, I'll allow this other entity that you probably don't know anything about called the Federal Reserve, and I'll just allow them to print the money to buy up this debt so we can just screw ourselves. But I'll get elected. I'll make a six-figure salary. I'll have great benefits and a pension, and you're going to continue to get screwed. But in the midst of all of this, it's all going to get more divisive in the country. Things aren't going to get done in Congress that are actually productive for the sake of the country and for the people. But you're going to be so upset, you're just going to focus on what I say and not what I do. And as long as I say the things that you want to hear, you're going to vote for me again. And then we're going to do this again and again and again and again. That's where we are, folks. That's why I could not vote for Donald Trump. That's why I could not vote for Joe Biden. That's why I voted for Joe Jorgensen, the Libertarian candidate. That's why I plead and beg you guys to leave the Democratic Party and to leave the Republican Party, because they do not care about you. You have no evidence. I have all the evidence. You have feelings. I have all of the evidence. I have 28 trillion pieces of evidence. All you have is, well, I like the guy or the lady, and they say what I want to hear. Not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And in the next 4 years, I'm going to have 49 trillion pieces of evidence, and you're going to have the same BS. When you're going to wake up, it doesn't get any more peaceful than what I have been stating. And yesterday's podcast was Make Peace, Not War. You want to talk about civil disobedience? Change your voter registration, become a libertarian and independent, unaffiliated, leave these parties immediately. They will start to wake up. They pay attention to this stuff. They pay attention to these voter registrations. And if they see it, they'll start to pick up a little bit. Now, that in and of itself is not going to be enough, but that's the easiest first step it is. You don't have to leave your house. You don't have to go to any state capital and start marching. You don't have to go to Washington, D.C. and start marching. You don't even have to write a letter to anybody. That's as easy and as peaceful as it gets, but it starts to send a message, and it does so very quickly. So again, I ask you to do so because you just continue to get played by this two-party system. That's it. I will not give these parties any more support whatsoever because they don't deserve it. And, you know, they can complain. They can try to act tough now, which is what the Republicans are going to do, because it's a Democrat-controlled government for the most part. So they're going to act like they're tough. They're going to act like they give a damn. They're going to be concerned all of a sudden about the deficits and the debts and future prosperity and how this is robbing our children of growth opportunities. Now all of a sudden they're going to see it. Several $1 trillion down the drain. They didn't care. Now all of a sudden they do. You know how we know they didn't care? 96-0, no votes for America. You remember that? Never, ever forget. You might forget. I won't, and I'm going to make sure that you don't forget it because I'm going to repeat that every once in a while as I have been for the past year. 96-0, no votes for America. That's the Nobody Cares Act. Okay? You got Nobody Cares Act 2.0 coming, and with Looney Tunes coming into the administration, it's going to be the Nobody Cares Act 3.0 and something else and something else and something else. It's just getting started. It's a different ballgame altogether. They will find a way to do it. Whether it's through Congress, whether it's through executive orders, whether it's pulling the markets and manipulating the markets to have a sell-off. So now the Republicans get concerned, oh, the market sold off, they didn't like it. We got to do more stuff. We got to print more money we don't have. Don't do it. There's always a trigger. There's always a pressure point to get people on board. 400,000 dead people, if that's not enough, wait till the Dow goes down 10% in 2 days. Oh, we got to pass more stimulus. Just wait. There's always an excuse. There's always that pressure point that they can push on and apply that pressure to make these weasels line up and get with the program. It's what they're going to do. It's just a question of when and how much money is it actually going to be. That's all it is. And they'll continue to do it because there's no accountability. People don't vote them out of office. Same people. Same people in office. They just get moved around to different positions. Maybe they were a congressman, now they're a senator. Maybe they were a chairman of this committee, now they're a chairman of that committee. That's all. That's all it is. Farewell, President Trump. It's basically farewell, the United States of America. Not because Trump's leaving. I'm not calling him the savior. I'm saying because this is just a continuation of all of this insanity. Donald Trump didn't go after entitlement spending. He didn't go after Medicare and Medicaid. and structurally reform it. He didn't go after Social Security and structurally reform it. Why? Because they are difficult things. Why? Because they can be deemed the third rail of politics. You don't touch the third rail, get electrocuted. Not good. But if we don't touch the third rail, if we don't go after these entitlement programs and many more others coming down the pike, universal basic income and everything else that they have been doing and are going to continue to do, well, that's it. There's no more country, there's no more society, there's no more economy. There's just a printing press and a bunch of idiots directing who are the winners and who are the losers. We already see how that's playing out. It's not working very well because the economics of it suck. That's not how economics works. If you could just continue to print money and that grows the economy, well, then there would never be any type of correction. There would never be any type of recession. If there was any sign of a slowdown, all they'd have to do is just kick it up a notch, throw some more money into the system. But that isn't how it works. But that's what they want you to believe. And I'll have to do a deeper discussion on a podcast on the Great Reset, maybe several of them, because that's in our face. That's not conspiratorial. That's not tinfoil on your head stuff. That is mainstream media. They say this stuff all the time. It's in print. It's in their interviews. It's in their testimonies. It's the Great Reset. What does this really mean? How's that going to affect your pocketbook? Well, we know, according to U.S. Debt Clock, you're going to go from a $28,000 in savings per family to $1,500. So obviously it's going to cost you a pretty penny. And I don't know if we're going to have time to get to Dingbat's confirmation hearing, but like I said, the gist of it was, don't have to worry about the debt, right? Well, again, we're going to go, and just for some perspective here, $27.8 trillion national debt. We have gross domestic product, GDP, right now at a little over $21 trillion. Okay? $21 trillion GDP. 4 years from now, January 19th, 2025, we're going to have a national debt over $49 trillion, $49.3 trillion. It keeps going up. Our gross domestic product is going to be at $24.6 trillion. So we went up $3 trillion. Meanwhile, our debt has gone up by $22 trillion. So where's the bang for the buck? We are working in the opposite direction, in the wrong direction. You know, we talk extensively in our book, The Cynic's Guide to Investing, about compounding interest and what that means and how you can use that in your favor to grow legitimate wealth. Well, if you enact the wrong policies, compounding interest can work against you. And that is exactly, unfortunately, what we have done. Didn't have to do it that way. We could have set ourselves up with policies, with positions that could have allowed time and compounding interest to work in our favor. But we haven't. And the reason is because it's not politically expedient to do so. We sacrifice the long term of this country, of this American experiment, for short-term benefits and gains, which that's all they are. They're short-term, and most of them aren't even real at the end of the day. Because so much of what we witness today and see and touch, we think it's real. Because it's in front of us. We can touch it, we can see it, we can go inside the building, we can get in the car. But that is at the expense of future growth and prosperity, so much of it. This is such an easy concept to grasp and to understand, yet most people don't. You know, again, going back to the tax cuts, but not cutting spending. You know, and people want to use the excuse, oh, this was the greatest economy ever. Well, if you make $100,000 and you go out and you spend $200,000, you're going to have a good time. But you're going to have to pay the bill at the end of the day. And that's still where we have yet to come. We continue to kick the can down the road. We continue to justify what we're doing. We continue to use the fact that we have very low interest rates as justification to continue to do these things. It's going to be to our detriment because there are no legitimate investments being made within this country. This is a continuation of picking winners and losers. This is the continuation of propping up zombie corporations and creating others as we continue going down this road. That too saturates future growth and prosperity. The talk of a $15 minimum wage. Now, that's going to destroy jobs. Now, obviously, if and when the economy turns around and some of the employment picture starts to look a little bit better, some of these people are going to come back to work. And yes, if this passes, they'll have to pay $15 minimum wage, at least minimum. What else might you see? People aren't going to be called back, or their hours will be cut. So you'll have more part-time employees as opposed to full-time employees. There's always going to be some sort of effect. There's always going to be some sort of behavioral change when you do these types of things. When you pull on all of these levers of the economy of society, there is going to be downstream effects. No matter how well-intentioned you are, there are going to be consequences to these decisions. This is not the government's arena to be dictating what anything should be. Government is too big, it's too pervasive. Government is not the solution. Government is the problem. Government survives at the expense of the people. It takes money from us through taxation. It takes it from the private productive sector. And the private productive sector is struggling right now. And they want to continue to destroy that economy, to squeeze the middle class and lower income individuals through the inflation tax, which is why you go from $28,000 in savings today per family to $1,500 in 4 years. Plus, your real legitimate taxes are going to be going up too, across the board. They might be able to delay some of this at the federal level, but not for long. But your states are most definitely going to have to increase them because they have to run balanced budgets. And those politicians made promises just like your congressmen and senators at the federal level have. They don't want to cut all these programs. They don't want to cut all this spending. They got pensions, they have obligations they have to meet. Your tools are going to go up, etc., etc., etc. There is no way you can run these types of deficits, spend all this money, and then not have taxes go up and everything else on the other side. There is no free lunch. But just understand how the game is played. Just understand that the powers that be have a different justice system for them, and they get to print money, and they get to give it to all of their buddies first, and with all of this monopoly money, they get to go out and they get to buy real assets with it. They get to buy real estate, commercial real estate, residential real estate, farmland. They get to go out and buy oil fields and natural gas deposits and other mines for minerals, metals, precious metals, you name it. They can actually go out and buy stuff with all of this funny money. The banks, which are starting to report their earnings for the fourth quarter, coming out and saying, oh, yeah, look, we made a ton of money. Oh, you think? You think? Congress printed $4 trillion. Geez, I wonder who got that money first. This is not difficult stuff, people. You just have to pay attention. And then when everything that they start to invest in is backstopped by the same institution, the Federal Reserve, that gave them all the money in the first place, how are you going to lose? And if you should lose, because market forces should rule the day, well, guess what's going to happen? These same institutions are going to be bailed out again by the same institutions that are bailing them out now. But go ahead and put your conspiracy theory hat on to go down this rabbit hole and that one. You don't have to do it. You don't have to go down those rabbit holes. You don't have to look like a Looney Tune. There's enough reality looking you right in the face that justifies putting these people on notice. And that's exactly what should be happening. Our politicians should always be put on notice. That's how it's supposed to operate. As our founders told us, when the government fears the people, there is liberty. And when the people fear its government, there is tyranny. Again, not difficult stuff to know, to grasp, to understand. That's how it's supposed to work. They are supposed to work for us. This is a different ball game. We are in the early innings of it. This is some type of great reset. This is going to be massive inflation. This is going to be a stagnant economy. That is stagflation, if you will. Those of you who lived through the 1970s know that that was not a pleasant an enjoyable experience. Well, guess what? This time it's going to be even worse because this is a mega bubble. And this time, we do not have a chairman of the Federal Reserve who has a backbone. Paul Volcker, in the 1970s, early 80s, knew what he had to do, knew that interest rates needed to be increased and increased significantly to contain the inflation. Now we have idiots who say, well, inflation needs to run hot, and we're at the zero bound, and maybe yield curve control, and wink, wink, some other central banks are already there with negative interest rates or going that way. It's a completely different picture with just trillions upon trillions of dollars more in debt, a country that is more divided now than what it was then, and it was divided then with all of the social issues and Vietnam and all this, that, and the other. But you know what? Well, actually, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say Vietnam. That was a little bit later than that. But you still had all those social issues. You still had a country that was somewhat divided. But now it's just more dry tinder all over the place, as I stated yesterday. People that understood a little bit more about economics and the foundations of this constitutional republic. Now it's completely all shredded. Entirely shredded. In our face. Every single day. President Trump didn't do much of anything to help it, encouraged a lot of it, continued to add to the swamp, not drain it. Of course, a lot of people don't see it that way, but that's just because you're more attached to the cult of personality as opposed to the actual facts on the ground. You want to spend an extra $1 trillion? I'll show you a good time too, but you're going to have to pay that bill. And that's what we're going to be facing in the not too distant future, and it's not going to be pretty for the vast majority of Americans. And not only that, inflation doesn't need to carry a passport. It goes all over the place. Not just here. So we're spreading our problems around the globe too, which is not good practice, not good policy. But there you have it. We'll have some other conversations about Dingbat and her confirmation hearing and what she's going to do and this, that, and the other. We know what they're going to do. But farewell, President Trump. I guess you tried for 4 years. You could only do so much. Good luck to you. Good luck to your family. I don't wish the man ill will at all. Enjoy the golf course, whatever you want to do. I'm sure we have not heard the last of him. I just hope it's nothing that really goes to further divide the country because we can't have it. A house divided cannot stand. But there you have it. Farewell, President Trump. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.